Emily, the new accountant at the company, was young, beautiful, and from a well-off family. Her graceful demeanor and stunning figure made her stand out, and a simple video of her shopping with a man garnered over 100,000 likes. Watching the video of them holding hands and laughing intimately, my hands trembled. My husband, David, is 48 years old. We've been married for 19 years and have a son studying abroad. 2 years ago, my parents-in-law passed away one after the other. After the funeral, David held me and cried.
In this life, you're my only family left. I promise I will never betray you and will be wholeheartedly devoted to you.
I held him and cried with him until dawn. For 19 years of marriage, he had indeed treated me this way. In the past 2 years, his career has been thriving, often traveling domestically and internationally. Despite his increasing workload, we would chat every day. I would remind him to eat on time, and no matter how busy he was, he would always reply. He would share new things from his day with me, take pictures of his lunch, and tell me that the takeout was delicious and suited my taste.
On birthdays, anniversaries, and holidays, no matter how busy I am, I will come back, even if just to have a meal with you.
I felt for him and told him, "We're an old married couple, there's no need for this."
Precisely because we're an old married couple, we need to do this. Every day counts.
Nearly 20 years of marriage, I accompanied him from poverty to wealth, from a girl to a woman, a wife, Mrs. David. Through hardships and storms, I had long shed my girlish side in the grind of time. But in the past 2 years, I felt more like a girl in love in front of him. I would buy pretty dresses, get fashionable hairstyles, prepare a good meal before he came home, and fantasize about watching a romantic movie with him. I would smile involuntarily when I saw an elderly couple holding hands walking past the corner. He was considerate to me, and I trusted him completely. Never doubted him. As his career grew, someone had to manage the household, so I stepped back. Emily appeared during this time. She was the daughter of one of our business partners, coincidentally attended the same university as me, and graduated with a master's degree under the same advisor. With these 3 connections, I trusted her greatly and treated her like a daughter. In 2 years, with my intentional promotion, she became my husband's secretary, taking over my position. I reminded her, "Your Uncle David has a bad stomach, make sure he eats on time." When they traveled, I would remind her, "Bring some digestive tablets, don't let your Uncle David eat too greasy." Their relationship grew closer because of this. Often, old colleagues would send me private messages, warning me.
David is getting close to the new young girl at the company, be careful of him falling for her.
I would just smile and reply that it was purely a superior-subordinate relationship. As the rumors grew, I still trusted them and didn't mind. Until I saw the video with my own eyes, the 2 of them holding hands, going out together, I finally believed it. The perfect husband in my heart had indeed cheated on me with a girl 2 decades younger. The husband who had never lied to me finally deceived me. He told me he was flying abroad for an important project and would be back in a week, but instead, he took Emily on a trip, and they were caught on camera. I angrily called him to question him. But after 6 calls, he either didn't answer or the phone indicated he was busy. I sat on the living room sofa like a ghost. After much thought, I dialed Emily's number. It rang for a long time, but Emily didn't answer. I called again, and this time, my husband David's voice came through.
I just got off the plane. I'll be home soon. I'll explain everything when I get back.
My heart felt like it was bleeding, and I nearly fainted. By dawn, David still hadn't returned, but my best friend called.
Laura, life goes on. You and David are at this age. You can't just get a divorce now. If you do, he'll just marry someone younger, and that would be letting him off too easily. Don't do something that will only hurt yourself.
I remained silent, feeling utterly confused. My mind was filled with questions. How could he lie to me? Why did he lie to me? At almost 50 years old, why would he make such a mistake with a young girl? Didn't he understand the seriousness of this? In the afternoon, David came back. When he opened the door and saw me sitting on the sofa in my pajamas, he was taken aback.
Did you sit here all night?
Yes, I couldn't sleep without an explanation from you.
David walked over and sat in front of me, avoiding eye contact.
I've had the video taken down from the internet. It won't affect the company.
And then?
David thought for a moment before saying,
Laura, it's not what you think with Emily. She just wanted to buy some clothes, and I went with her. The streets were crowded, and I didn't think much of it. We were just a bit close. It's not like what the internet says.
I stopped listening to him after that. The tension in my body suddenly released, and I felt like I had no strength left. He tried to explain, to convince me that they were just friends, but he never explained why he lied to me, why he said he was still abroad when he had returned 3 days ago.
Why did you answer Emily's phone last night?
We've been married for 19 years. What I care about is not the trivial things, but why he lied to me. Why did his heart, which had been steadfast for 19 years, suddenly change?
Laura, I hope you don't misunderstand and don't go looking for Emily because of the video. She's been exposed online, and the situation has escalated. She's now in the hospital with a high fever. I need to visit her and explain to her parents. She's just a young girl and can't handle this. I hope you can help calm things down.
All right, I'll put on some makeup and go.
Hearing my agreement, David sighed in relief. He patted my hand and promised.
I'm sorry, honey. Once this blows over, I'll keep my distance from her.
With that, he got up and left without looking back. Watching his retreating figure, I couldn't hold back my tears any longer. His seemingly composed demeanor was just a clever disguise. He didn't come close to me, didn't repeatedly ask what else I was suspicious of. He didn't rush to comfort me when I was hurt, didn't assure me that he was always there for me. His concern, his urgency, his hurried actions were all for Emily. I was just a part of his current life, something he had to compromise with. Realizing this, my heart felt like it was being stabbed with a sharp knife, the pain unbearable. They say men change when they have money, but I've been married to David for 19 years. If he wanted to change, he would have done so long ago. Why now? With these thoughts, I walked into the hospital and reached her room. Emily woke up just in time. She looked at me with her delicate, pale face and smiled.
Mrs. Smith, you're here?
I looked at Emily's face, scrutinizing it. She was indeed bright, beautiful, and knowledgeable. Any man might be attracted to her. With her background, she had no shortage of suitors. Why did she choose David?
David took my parents out for a meal. He'll be back soon. Please, have a seat, Mrs. Smith.
Her calling David David and me Mrs. Smith made the relationship clear. She obviously wanted to lay everything out.
All right.
I closed the door and sat down in front of her.
So, you and David are really in a relationship?
Emily shook her head.
Mrs. Smith, you misunderstood. David and I are not in that kind of relationship.
What?
David proposed to me, and I accepted.
My scalp felt like it was exploding, and I almost couldn't control myself from hitting her.
Mrs. Smith, you should let David go. He's been very unhappy with you.
What do you mean?
Mrs. Smith, do you remember Grace?
You know her? How do you know her?
Grace was David's first love. I learned about Grace a year after marrying David. At that time, I was 6 months pregnant and staying at home. While tidying up the house, I found David's high school diary. It had a broken lock but was well preserved. Out of curiosity, I opened it. The first part was about his youth, and the latter part was about a girl named Grace. I also found a photo of Grace in the diary. She was pale, quiet, and clear, like moonlight. I closed the diary and put it back in its place without asking David about it. David never mentioned her to me either. Occasionally, I would ask about his high school days, and he would talk about them, but he never mentioned Grace. I thought he was trying to forget her by not talking about her. For 20 years, he never brought her up, so I assumed he had forgotten. But now, hearing her name from another woman, I realized he had never forgotten her.
Don't you think I look a lot like Grace?
They did look somewhat alike. Before I could respond, Emily continued.
David told me I look like Grace, so he can't help but like me and want to be good to me. When he looks at me, he can't help but feel moved and pained. He loves Grace deeply, and therefore, he loves me too.
Tears streamed down my face.
If he hasn't forgotten her in 20 years, do you think he will forget Grace because he likes you? At most, he sees you as a substitute because you look like her.
It doesn't matter.
I looked at her in surprise.
Feelings are fleeting. It's just a matter of who gets tired of whom first. Right now, David likes me, and I like David. I'm even willing to marry him. If he stops liking me or I stop liking him, we won't force each other, and we'll naturally divorce. Then we'll live our own lives without disturbing each other.
My initial confusion turned into speechlessness. Emily sat up straighter and poured me a cup of hot water from the bedside table.
Mrs. Smith, I know you're very upset and can't let this go, but the reality is what it is. This man isn't worth your attachment. Let him go and give him to me.
She handed me the cup with a friendly smile. Looking at her, hearing her ask me to give David to her, I suddenly found the once bright and wise girl repulsive. An uncontrollable anger surged within me.
You wretch!
I stood up abruptly, grabbed the cup, and splashed the water on her face.
Ah!
Emily screamed and fell to the ground. The scalding water splashed on my hand, causing a sharp pain, and I dropped the cup. At that moment, the door to the hospital room opened. David and Emily's parents walked in.
Daughter!
Emily's parents cried out simultaneously and rushed to hold their daughter. Emily clutched her face, crying in her mother's arms.
It hurts so much.
Her mother held her tenderly, while her father glared at me.
Laura, if anything happens to my daughter, I won't let you off.
Laura, you are so disappointing. I never thought you could be so unreasonable. Get out, now.
David glared at me, shouting for the first time.
Laura, leave!
I looked at David for a long time. Finally, I had seen enough, and my heart turned cold.
David, come out with me. I need to hear it from you.
David's face stiffened. I turned to Emily.
Stop pretending. Give me 10 minutes. I want an answer, and I'll give you a satisfactory one.
I walked to the door, but David didn't move.
David, do you want to solve this here? I'll go home first. If you're not back in 2 hours, I'll ruin you.
I angrily called him to question him. But after 6 calls, he either didn't answer or the phone indicated he was busy. I sat on the living room sofa like a ghost. After much thought, I dialed Emily's number. It rang for a long time, but Emily didn't answer. I called again, and this time, my husband David's voice came through.
I just got off the plane. I'll be home soon. I'll explain everything when I get back.
My heart felt like it was bleeding, and I nearly fainted. I angrily called him to question him. But after 6 calls, he either didn't answer or the phone indicated he was busy. I sat on the living room sofa like a ghost. After much thought, I dialed Emily's number. It rang for a long time, but Emily didn't answer. I called again, and this time, my husband David's voice came through.
I just got off the plane. I'll be home soon. I'll explain everything when I get back.
My heart felt like it was bleeding, and I nearly fainted. After we got married, he treated me well and was always by my side, taking me wherever he went. He tried hard to love me and forget Grace. But the more he tried, the harder it became to forget.
Laura, I want to love you, I really do.
He forced himself to live with me, to like everything about me. He could share a bed with me, eat from the same bowl, and live with me for a lifetime, but he just couldn't love me. Everything was forced. Finally, our child grew up, we aged, and our parents passed away. He felt he had completed his life's duties. He didn't want to continue this meaningless existence, he wanted to live for himself.
Then Emily appeared. The moment I saw Emily, I felt she was Grace. They really look alike. The moment I saw her, my heart raced. I couldn't help but want to see her smile and be with her all the time.
He looked at me and said,
Laura, I'm sorry. My parents are gone, and our son is abroad. I've taken care of you for 20 years. This time, I want to be myself and make my life meaningful. Can you let me go?
His words left me breathless. I couldn't understand how he could say such things so confidently.
If you didn't love me, why did you enter my life? Why did you hold me tightly when I wanted to leave? David, have you ever considered my feelings?
I'm sorry, I can't help it. I can't control myself anymore. You can take all my money, the company, the house, and the stocks. I'll leave with nothing. I just want to be with Emily.
I leaned back in my chair, feeling cold from head to toe. That night, David laid bare his soul, making me realize that he had tried his best to love me but had ultimately wasted my life. I loved him, but I hated him even more. He shattered my fantasies about love, turning countless touching moments into bitter memories. In the end, I didn't forgive him. I took the house, the car, and 80% of the money in his account. 3 days later, I got everything I deserved. But I wasn't done with him. I spent a lot of money to dig into Emily's background and pushed the videos of them shopping together back into the spotlight. I also sold all the stocks I had overnight. As expected, David was ruined. The company's market value plummeted by nearly $1 billion overnight. Under pressure, David had to resign as chairman and was ousted from the company he had founded. After he fell from grace, scandals kept surfacing. Emily, too, was criticized for her relationship with a man 20 years her senior. Her reputation was tarnished at a young age. She had no choice but to go abroad to wait for the storm to pass before she could return, which would take at least 2 years. The next morning, I boarded a plane to the United States. I had 2 purposes for this trip: to see my son and to embark on a spontaneous world tour after seeing him. Soon, photos of a beautiful 45-year-old woman went viral. People said I embodied the beauty of a woman my age. It wasn't long before someone discovered that I was the ex-wife of a certain company's CEO, and David and Emily were criticized once more. I just smiled, put away my phone, and walked towards the beautiful scenery ahead.
The end.